The moon was cold and lifeless, a barren rock orbiting a dying star at the edge of the galaxy. It wasn't the kind of place anyone would choose to visit unless they were desperate or curious. For Dr. June Park, it was both. June had spent most of her life chasing old stories, legends that others dismissed as myths. She believed there was truth hidden beneath layers of time and dust, waiting for someone willing to dig deep enough. Her team called her relentless, but she didn't mind the label. Relentlessness was what made her good at her job. And today, on this forgotten moon, her determination was about to pay off. Her boots crunched against the gray surface as she walked toward the excavation site. Behind her trailed Hyun-Soo Lee, her longtime colleague and friend. Hyun-Soo was quieter than June, more methodical, but just as passionate about uncovering the secrets of the universe. Together, they made a perfect team. Ji-yoon's bold leaps balanced by Hyun-Soo's careful calculations. "Are you sure about this?" Hyun-Soo asked, his voice crackling through their comms. He adjusted the scanner in his hand, its blue light flickering faintly in the dim glow of the distant star. "We've been out here for weeks, and so far, all we've found is, well, nothing." Ji-yoon stopped and turned to face him, her helmet visor reflecting the faint light. "Nothing? Hyun-Soo, look around you. This isn't nothing. This is history. Every layer of this moon tells a story. We just need to listen." Hyun-Soo sighed but nodded. He trusted Ji-yoon's instincts, even when they seemed impossible. They continued walking until they reached the pit where their team had been working tirelessly for days. The hole stretched wide and deep, revealing strange patterns carved into the rock below. At first glance, they looked like natural formations, but something about them caught Ji-yoon's eye. "These markings," she said, kneeling down to examine them closely. "They're not random. Look at the symmetry, the precision. Someone made these." Hyun-Soo crouched beside her, running his gloved fingers over the grooves. "You think it's alien?" "I know it's alien," Ji-yoon replied with a grin. "No human civilization could have survived out here, let alone left behind something like this. But whoever did this, they wanted us to find it." Over the next few hours, the team worked together to carefully excavate the area. As they dug deeper, the markings became clearer, forming intricate designs that spiraled outward like a cosmic web. Then, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the moon, one of the workers gasped. "What is that?" he asked, pointing to a glimmer of light beneath the dirt. Ji-yoon hurried over, brushing away the loose soil with trembling hands. What she uncovered took her breath away. Embedded in the rock was a small, glowing crystal, pulsating softly with an otherworldly energy. Around it, the carvings formed a perfect circle, almost like a frame. "It's a map," Hyun-Soo whispered, his voice filled with awe. But it wasn't just any map. When Ji-yoon touched the crystal, it sprang to life, projecting a three-dimensional hologram above the ground. Stars and planets shimmered before their eyes, each one labeled with symbols no one recognized. It was breathtaking and overwhelming. For hours, Ji-yoon and Hyun-Soo studied the projection, trying to make sense of it. The map covered vast stretches of space, detailing constellations and solar systems they'd never seen before. Some of the worlds appeared familiar, matching record from Earth's earliest space explorations. Others, however, were completely unknown. Then Ji-yoon noticed something odd. Among the thousands of stars and planets charted on the map, one spot remained blank, a single empty space where a world should have been. "Hyun-Soo," she said, pointing to the void. "Do you see that?" He frowned, leaning closer. "It's missing. Why would they leave one planet out?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Ji-yoon murmured. "Whoever created this map went to incredible lengths to document everything else. So why omit this one world?" As they stood there, staring at the mysterious gap, a chill ran down Ji-yoon's spine. Something about it felt wrong. Not just the absence itself, but the way the surrounding stars seemed to shift slightly whenever she looked directly at it. It was almost as if the empty space was alive, watching them back. "We need to figure out where this map came from," Ji-yoon said finally, "and we need to find out what happened to that missing world." Hyun-Soo nodded, though his expression was troubled. "If it's missing, it might be for a reason. Maybe we shouldn't." "No," June interrupted firmly. This is why we're here. To discover things people thought were lost forever. Whatever this map is hiding, it's important. I can feel it. Reluctantly, Hyun-soo agreed. They packed up the artifact and prepared to return to their research vessel, the Orion's Veil. As they lifted off the moon's surface, June couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She glanced back at the desolate landscape one last time, half expecting to see movement in the shadows. Instead, all she saw was emptiness. Back aboard the ship, June and Hyun-soo began analyzing the map in greater detail. The crystal emitted a low hum as they connected it to their computers, feeding data into their systems. Slowly, the alien symbols began to translate themselves, revealing fragments of information about the civilizations that had once thrived among the stars. But the more they learned, the more questions arose. Who had created the map? How old was it? And most importantly, why had one world been erased? As they worked, June found herself drawn to the empty space again and again. There was something hypnotic about it, something that tugged at the edges of her mind. She tried to focus on the task at hand, but the void refused to let her go. That night, as the rest of the crew slept, June stayed awake, staring at the hologram. She reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against the projection. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the map flared brighter and the empty space pulsed violently, sending a shock wave through the ship. Alarms blared, waking everyone on board. Hyun-soo rushed into the lab, his face pale with concern. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I don't know," June exclaimed, stepping back from the map. "I just touched it." Before they could react further, the crystal went dark, leaving only silence in its wake. June exchanged a worried glance with Hyun-soo. Whatever they had awakened, it wasn't done with them yet. News of the discovery spread faster than June had anticipated. By the time the Orion's Veil returned to its designated research station, a floating outpost orbiting a gas giant on the edge of explored space, word of the ancient star map had already reached ears far beyond their small team. The artifact was no longer just a relic of the past. It was now a prize, coveted by those who saw value not in knowledge, but in power. June and Hyun-soo tried to keep the details quiet, but whispers traveled quickly among the crew. Someone must have sent a message while they were still en route, because within hours of docking, representatives from various factions began arriving at the station. Scientists, historians, corporate executives, all wanted a piece of the map, but none were as persistent or as unsettling as Minju Kong. Minju represented Nova Corp, one of the largest and most ruthless corporations in the galaxy. Known for their cutting-edge technology and questionable ethics, Nova Corp had built an empire by exploiting resources others deemed untouchable. From rare minerals on hostile planets to classified data stolen from rival companies, nothing was off-limits if it meant profit. And now, they had set their sights on the star map. Minju herself was as polished as she was intimidating. She wore a sleek black suit that seemed designed to blend authority with menace, her sharp features framed by neatly styled hair. Her voice carried an air of calm confidence, but her eyes betrayed something colder, calculating, predatory. When she stepped onto the station, flanked by two imposing guards, even the usually unflappable June felt a pang of unease. "Dr. Park," Minju said smoothly, extending a hand when they met in the station's conference room. "It's an honor to meet the woman behind such a remarkable discovery." June shook her hand cautiously, noting the way Minju's gaze lingered a moment too long. "Thank you," she replied, keeping her tone neutral. "But I'm afraid we're still in the early stages of analysis. There's much we don't understand yet." "Oh, I'm sure there is," Minju said with a faint smile. "That's why Nova Corp would like to offer our assistance. We have the resources, the expertise, and the facilities to help unlock the map secrets." Hyun-soo, seated beside June, shifted uncomfortably. "We appreciate the offer," he interjected, "but this is a scientific endeavor. It requires careful study, not commercial interests." Minju's smile didn't waver, though her tone hardened slightly. "Let's not pretend this isn't bigger than just science, Dr. Lee. Whatever this map reveals could change the course of history, for better or worse." Wouldn't you agree? Before June could respond, Minju leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. I'll be honest with you, Doctor. Nova Corp has been searching for something like this for decades. Ancient artifacts, lost civilizations, they all point to one thing: power. Power to reshape worlds, to rewrite the rules of existence itself. You've stumbled upon something extraordinary, Dr. Park. Don't let it slip away because of misplaced idealism. Ji-yoon stared at her, her mind racing. She knew exactly what Minju was implying. That Nova Corp wasn't interested in preserving the map's secrets for the sake of knowledge. They wanted control. And if they got their hands on it, there was no telling what they might do. We'll consider your proposal, Ji-yoon said finally, choosing her words carefully. But for now, the map stays with us. Minju nodded, though her expression suggested she wasn't accustomed to being denied. Very well. But remember, Dr. Park, time is a luxury you may not have. Others will come looking for this map, and not all of them will be as reasonable as I am. With that, she stood and left the room, her guards trailing behind her like shadows. The tension in the air lingered long after she was gone. Later that evening, Ji-yoon and Hyun-soo sat alone in the lab, the star map glowing softly between them. Neither spoke for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. What are we going to do? Hyun-soo asked finally, breaking the silence. Nova Corp won't give up easily. If they find out about the missing world... I know, June interrupted, her voice firm despite the weight of the situation. That's why we can't let them get close. Not to the map, and certainly not to whatever that missing world represents. But how? Hyun-soo pressed. They have ships, weapons, money. We're just scientists. We can't fight them. No, June agreed, her gaze fixed on the pulsing void in the hologram. But we can run. Hyun-soo frowned. Run where? Even if we leave the station, they'll track us down. And besides, we don't even know where the missing world is supposed to be. June hesitated, then turned to face him. What if we did? What if we used the map to find it ourselves? Hyun-soo's eyes widened. Are you serious? We barely understand how this thing works. Jumping into unknown space based on incomplete data, it's insane. It's risky, yes, June admitted. But think about it. If we stay here, Nova Corp will take the map, and who knows what they'll do with it. If we go, we might actually learn the truth. Isn't that worth the risk? Hyun-soo opened his mouth to argue, but stopped himself. He knew Ji-yoon was right. Staying put wasn't an option, not anymore. All right, he said finally, but we'll need help. Tae-wook, maybe. He's the best pilot we've got. Ji-yoon nodded, relief washing over her. Good. Let's bring him in. The next morning, they approached Tae-wook Choi, the ship's pilot and one of the few people outside their immediate team who knew about the map. Tae-wook was younger than Ji-yoon and Hyun-soo, with a mischievous grin and a knack for getting into and out of trouble. He loved adventure almost as much as he loved flying, and when Ji-yoon explained their plan, his eyes lit up with excitement. You want to fly us into completely uncharted territory based on a 1,000-year-old map with big blank spot, he said, grinning. Sounds fun. Count me in. With Tae-wook on board, the trio set to work preparing the Orion's Veil for departure. They disabled the ship's tracking systems, erased logs of their destination, and stocked up on supplies. By the time they were ready to leave, word of their intentions had somehow leaked, likely thanks to someone loyal to Nova Corp. As they prepared to undock, 3 Nova Corp cruisers arrived at the station, blocking their exit. Looks like we got company, Tae-wook muttered, glancing at the view screen. The cruisers loomed large, their weapon systems ominously active. Ji-yoon clenched her fists, her heart pounding. We can't let them stop us. Then we'd better move fast, Tae-wook replied, his fingers flying over the controls. With a sudden burst of speed, the Orion's Veil shot forward, narrowly avoiding the cruiser's first volley of fire. Alarms blared as Tae-wook maneuvered the ship through a chaotic dance of laser blasts and debris. They're gaining on us. Hyun-soo shouted, gripping the back of Tae-wook's chair. Not for long. Tae-wook said, grinning despite the danger. He flipped a switch, activating the ship's experimental jump drive, a risky piece of tech that hadn't been fully tested. The engines roared as the ship accelerated, leaving the cruisers behind in a blur of light. When the turbulence subsided, they found themselves in deep space, far from the station and far from Nova Corp. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the ship's systems. "We made it," Hyun-Soo breathed, slumping into a nearby seat. "For now," June added, her eyes fixed on the star map. "But this is just the beginning." Ahead of them lay countless dangers: asteroid fields, rogue AI drones, and hostile scavenger fleets. Yet none of those threats compared to the mystery waiting at the end of their journey. The missing world, hidden somewhere in the vastness of the galaxy. As the Orion's veil sailed onward, June couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn towards something far greater than they could imagine. Something that had been waiting for them all along. This concludes part 2 of the story. Let me know if you'd like me to proceed with writing part 3, following the same guidelines. The journey through deep space was anything but smooth. Days turned into weeks as the Orion's veil pushed further into uncharted territory, guided only by the faint whispers of the ancient star map. The ship's systems groaned under the strain of constant travel, and the crew grew weary, their nerves frayed by the endless void outside the windows. But despite the challenges, Jiun, Hyun-Soo, and Tae-wook pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and desperation. Their first major obstacle came in the form of an asteroid field, so dense it seemed impossible to navigate. Rocks of all sizes floated aimlessly, colliding with each other in slow-motion chaos. The debris created a deadly maze, with jagged edges that could tear through the ship's hull like paper. "This doesn't look good," Tae-wook muttered, his hand steady on the controls as he scanned the view screen. "If we hit even one of these things at this speed—" "We don't have a choice," June interrupted, her voice firm. "We can't turn back now." Hyun-Soo leaned over Tae-wook's shoulder, studying the readouts. "There's a narrow path here," he said, pointing to a cluster of smaller asteroids. "It's risky, but if we time it right, we might be able to slip through." Tae-wook nodded, his fingers flying across the console as he adjusted the ship's trajectory. The engines roared as the Orion's veil darted forward, weaving between the massive rocks with precision that bordered on miraculous. For several tense minutes, the sound of scraping metal echoed through the cabin as they narrowly avoided collisions. Finally, they emerged on the other side, battered but intact. "That was too close," Hyun-Soo said, exhaling sharply. "Next time, let's find a safer route." "There won't be a next time," June replied, her eyes fixed on the star map glowing faintly in the lab. "Not if we keep moving forward." As they continued their journey, the dangers grew more unpredictable. In one sector, they encountered rogue AI drones, remnant of a long-forgotten war. These mechanical hunters patrolled the area relentlessly, programmed to destroy anything that entered their domain. When the drones detected the Orion's veil, they swarmed the ship, firing energy blasts that shook its frame. Shields are down to 40%. Tae-wook shouted, his knuckles white as he fought to evade the relentless attack. "We can't take much more of this." June ran to the lab, searching for something, anything, that could help them survive. Her eyes landed on the star map, which pulsed faintly in response to the chaos around them. She touched the crystal at its center, hoping for guidance. To her surprise, the map lit up, projecting a series of coordinates onto the screen. "What is that?" Hyun-Soo asked, rushing to her side. "I think it's showing us a way out," June said, her voice tinged with hope. "Follow those coordinates." Tae-wook inputted the new course, and the ship surged forward, leaving the drones behind. As they escaped, the trio exchanged glances, silently acknowledging how close they had come to disaster. But the most harrowing encounter came when they crossed paths with a scavenger fleet, a group of ruthless pirates who preyed on travelers in remote regions of space. The fleet surrounded the Orion's veil, demanding surrender and threatening to fire if their demands weren't met. "They're not going to let us go," Tae-wook said grimly, his hands gripping the controls. "They'll strip the ship for parts, or worse." June's mind raced. They couldn't fight. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But surrender wasn't an option either. Then she remembered something. The experimental jump drive they'd used to escape Nova Corp. It had been damaged in the earlier skirmish, but perhaps it still had enough power for one last leap. Tae-wook, "Activate the jump drive," she ordered. "It's barely holding together," he protested. "If we try to use it again, we could end up anywhere or nowhere." "We don't have a choice," Jiyun insisted. "Do it." With a deep breath, Taewook activated the drive. The ship shuddered violently as the engine sputtered, then flared to life. In a flash of light, the Orion's veil disappeared, leaving the scavengers behind in confusion. When they re-emerged, they found themselves in unfamiliar space. The stars looked different here, their patterns alien and strange. For a moment, the crew sat in stunned silence, unsure of where or when they were. "Are we alive?" Hyun-soo finally asked, breaking the quiet. "For now," Taewook replied, his voice shaky. "But I don't think the jump drive will work again anytime soon." Jiyun ignored their exhaustion and fear, focusing instead on the star map. Its glow had grown brighter, almost as if it recognized their proximity to their destination. She studied the hologram closely, noting that the pulsing void, the missing world, was now closer than ever. "We're almost there," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. "Whatever this place is, it's waiting for us." Hours later, they arrived at the coordinates marked on the map. What they found defied explanation. Instead of a planet, they saw a massive black hole surrounded by swirling clouds of luminous gas. At its edge floated a derelict spacecraft, ancient and battered, yet somehow still intact. "This can't be real," Hyun-soo whispered, staring at the sight before them. "It's real," Jiyun replied, her heart pounding. "And it's exactly what we've been looking for." Against their better judgment, the trio decided to board the ghost ship, armed with scanners and tools. They crossed a short distance in a shuttle, their movements cautious and deliberate. As they stepped inside the derelict vessel, they were struck by the eerie silence. Dust covered every surface, and the air smelled stale, as though no one had set foot here in millennia. "This place gives me the creeps," Taewook muttered, shining a flashlight down a dark corridor. June led the way, her determination outweighing her unease. They explored room after room, uncovering remnants of a once thriving civilization, advanced technology, intricate artwork, and logbooks written in an unfamiliar language. Slowly, they pieced together fragments of a chilling story. This ship belonged to a species that had achieved immortality, not through biology, but through mastery of time itself. They had learned to manipulate reality, bending it to their will. But their experiments had gone horribly wrong, creating a force so destructive it consumed everything in its path, including their home world. The missing world wasn't destroyed, June realized aloud, flipping through the translated entries. It was erased. They removed it from existence to contain the catastrophe. But why leave this ship behind? Hyun-soo asked, gesturing to the ruins around them. "Maybe they didn't have a choice," June replied. "Or maybe they wanted someone to find it, to learn from their mistakes." As they delved deeper, June began experiencing strange visions. Flashes of the doomed planet's final days haunted her, accompanied by whispers urging her to complete the circle. She tried to ignore them, focusing instead on the task at hand. But the visions grew stronger, pulling at the edges of her mind. Finally, they discovered a hidden chamber containing another fragment of the star map. This one showed additional systems connected to the lost world, along with cryptic warnings about the void that devours light. "We need to leave," Hyun-soo said urgently, sensing the growing tension in the air. "This place isn't safe." June hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. But as the whispers grew louder, she nodded. "Let's go." Back aboard the Orion's Veil, the crew processed what they had learned. The missing world wasn't just a mystery. It was a warning, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the cost of playing God. But as they prepared to leave, June couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. The star map still held secrets, and the void at its center continued to pulse faintly, beckoning them forward. "There's nowhere to run," Taewook exclaimed, "unless you want to fly straight into that black hole." June froze, staring at the swirling vortex on the screen. Then an idea sparked in her mind, a desperate, reckless plan. "That's exactly what we'll do." "What?" both Taewook and Hyun-soo shouted in unison. It's the only way, June insisted, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Nova Corp will never follow us into a black hole. They're too cautious. But we have to move fast. Hyun-soo grabbed her arm. Are you insane? We'll be torn apart before we even cross the event horizon. Not if we use the jump drive, June countered. If we time it right, we can slip past the gravitational pull and emerge on the other side. It's risky, but it's our only chance. Tae-wook hesitated, then nodded grimly. All right, but if this works, I'm buying myself a vacation after all this is over. With seconds to spare, Tae-wook activated the jump drive, sending the Orion's veil hurtling toward the black hole. The gravitational forces pulled at the ship, stretching it like taffy, but just as the structure began to groan under the strain, the jump drive flared to life. In a flash of blinding light, the ship vanished, leaving the Nova Corp fleet behind. When they re-emerged, they found themselves in a strange, distorted region of space. Stars twisted and bent unnaturally, their light warped by the immense gravity of the black hole. But ahead of them, floating eerily in the void, was another derelict spacecraft, one far larger and more ancient than the first. This place, June whispered, her voice trembling. It's part of the missing world. Against his better judgment, Hyun-soo agreed to investigate. The trio boarded the massive ship, their footsteps echoing through its cavernous halls. Inside, they found evidence of a civilization that had reached unimaginable heights and fallen just as far. Logbooks and recordings painted a picture of society consumed by hubris, driven to destroy itself in pursuit of ultimate knowledge. But the most startling discovery came when they entered the ship's core chamber. There, suspended in a field of shimmering energy, was a crystalline artifact identical to one they had found on the moon. This one, however, was cracked and darkened, its glow extinguished. It's broken, Hyun-soo said, examining it closely. Whatever this was, it used to power the entire system. Without it, the world collapsed. As June reached out to touch the artifact, the whispers returned, louder and more urgent than ever. Complete the circle, they urged. Restore the balance. No, June whispered, pulling her hand back. This isn't ours to fix. Before she could say more, the ship trembled violently. Alarms blared as the energy field destabilized, threatening to collapse entirely. The trio scrambled to escape, narrowly avoiding being crushed by falling debris. As they fled back to the Orion's veil, the derelict ship imploded behind them, disappearing into the void. Back aboard their own vessel, they regrouped, shaken but alive. June held the second map fragment tightly, her resolve hardening. Nova Corp can't have this, she said firmly. If they get their hands on these artifacts, they'll make the same mistakes as the people who created them. We have to protect them at any cost. Hyun-soo nodded reluctantly. Then what do we do? We scatter the pieces, June replied. Erase all records of our discoveries and send decoy fragments across the galaxy. Let others chase shadows while we keep the truth safe. Tae-wook grinned weakly. Sounds like a plan. But next time, can we pick somewhere less deadly to visit? June managed a small smile. No promises. This concludes Part 4 of the story. Let me know if you'd like me to proceed with writing Part 5, following the same guidelines. The decision to scatter the map fragments was not an easy one, but June knew it was the only way to ensure their safety, and the safety of others. The artifacts they had uncovered were too powerful, too dangerous, to fall into the wrong hands. Nova Corp would stop at nothing to claim them, and June couldn't risk letting that happen. But as she and her crew worked to erase all traces of their discoveries, a deeper question lingered in her mind. What did it mean to complete the circle? The whispers from the void still echoed in her thoughts, refusing to let her go. For weeks, the Orion's veil traveled through uncharted space, leaving behind decoy fragments of star map on barren moons and abandoned outposts. Each piece was carefully designed to mislead anyone who might come looking. False coordinates, incomplete data, cryptic symbols that led nowhere. It was a painstaking process, but June took solace in knowing they were buying time, creating distractions that would keep Nova Corp and others like them occupied while the real secrets remained hidden. Hyun-soo and Tae-wook supported her every step of the way, though neither fully understood why June seemed so haunted. She rarely spoke about the visions or the whispers, keeping her concerns buried beneath layers of determination. But late at night, when the ship drifted silently through the stars, she would sit alone in the lab, staring at the faint glow of the original map fragment. The pulsing void still called to her, its rhythm steady and unrelenting. One evening, as the crew prepared for another drop-off, Hyun-soo approached her. "You've been quiet lately," he said softly. "Is something wrong?" June hesitated, then shook her head. "It's nothing. Just tired, I guess." "You don't have to lie to me," Hyun-soo pressed gently. "We're in this together, remember? Whatever's bothering you, we'll figure it out." She looked at him, seeing the concern in his eyes, and finally relented. "I keep hearing it, the whispers. They won't stop. And now I'm starting to wonder, maybe the missing world isn't really gone. Maybe it's waiting. For us." Hyun-soo frowned. "Waiting for what?" "For someone to finish what they started," June replied. "To restore the balance, or destroy completely." Before Hyun-soo could respond, Tae-wook's voice crackled over the comms. "We got a problem." They hurried to the bridge, where Tae-wook was monitoring the ship's sensors. On the view screen, a massive energy signature flared brightly in the distance, a black hole surrounded by swirling clouds of luminous gas. It was the same black hole they had escaped weeks earlier, the one that had led them to the derelict ship carrying the broken artifact. "What are we doing back here?" Tae-wook asked, his tone uneasy. "I thought we programmed the autopilot to avoid this place." "We didn't," June said quietly, her gaze fixed on the screen. "The map brought us here." "The map?" Hyun-soo repeated, confused. "How?" June held up the fragment, which now pulsed in sync with the black hole. "It's guiding us, pulling us back." Tae-wook groaned. "Great. So much for avoiding danger." Despite their reservations, June insisted they investigate. Something about the black hole felt different this time, less threatening, more inviting. As they drew closer, the energy field around it stabilized, revealing a narrow corridor of calm space leading directly into its heart. "It's like it wants us to go inside," Hyun-soo murmured, awestruck. "Or it's a trap," Tae-wook muttered under his breath. June ignored their warnings, her resolve firm. If this is where the answers are, then this is where we need to go. With no other options, Tae-wook guided the Orion's veil into the corridor, the ship trembling slightly as it passed through the gravitational forces. When they emerged on the other side, they found themselves in a surreal landscape unlike anything they had ever seen. The blackness of space was replaced by a shimmering expanse of light and color, shifting and flowing like liquid. At the center of it all floated a single glowing orb, the remnants of the missing world. This is impossible," Hyun-soo whispered, his voice filled with awe. "It's beautiful," June breathed, stepping forward instinctively. As they approached the orb, the whispers returned, louder and clearer than before. This time, however, they weren't just in June's mind. They filled the entire ship, resonating through every surface. "Complete the circle," they urged. "Restore what was lost." June reached out toward the orb, her hand trembling. "What happens if I touch it?" "I don't think we should find out," Hyun-soo said quickly, grabbing her arm. "This could be exactly what destroyed the original civilization. But what if it's not?" June countered. "What if it's a chance to fix everything, to undo the mistakes they made?" Before Hyun-soo could argue further, the orb began to pulse violently, sending shock waves through the ship. Alarms blared as systems malfunctioned, and the crew scrambled to stabilize their vessel. In the chaos, June broke free from Hyun-soo's grasp and touched the orb. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, a surge of energy coursed through her body. Visions flooded her mind. Images of the lost world, its people, their triumphs and failures. She saw the experiments that had led to their downfall, the desperate attempts to contain the catastrophe, and the final act of erasure that had removed their planet from existence. And then she saw something else. A choice. You can restore it. A voice whispered, soft and melodic. Or you can let it remain forgotten. June hesitated, torn between the possibilities. Restoring the world meant bringing back a civilization capable of unimaginable power, but also unimaginable destruction. Letting it stay erased meant preserving the fragile balance of the galaxy, even if it came at the cost of lost knowledge. "I can't do this alone," she said aloud, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "You don't have to," the voice replied. "Trust your instincts." June closed her eyes, focusing on the weight of responsibility resting on her shoulders. Finally, she made her decision. She pulled her hand away from the orb, severing the connection. The energy subsided instantly, leaving the ship eerily silent. "What happened?" Hyun-Soo asked, his face pale with worry. "I ended it," June said simply. "The cycle is broken." The orb dimmed, its glow fading until it vanished entirely. Around them, the shimmering expanse dissolved, returning them to normal space. The black hole was gone, replaced by an empty void. Back aboard the Orion's Veil, the crew sat in stunned silence, processing what had just occurred. Ji-yoon stared at the star map fragment in her hand, which had grown dark and lifeless. Its purpose had been fulfilled, or perhaps rendered meaningless. "So that's it," Tae-wook asked finally. "We're done. For now," Ji-yoon replied, her voice steady. "But we'll keep moving. There's still mysteries out there, waiting to be discovered." In the years that followed, tales of the legendary star map became mythologized among explorers and treasure hunters. Some claimed it held the key to immortality. Others warned of the void that devoured light. Few believed the stories were true, until strange phenomena began appearing in sectors of space once thought empty. Ji-yoon and her crew never returned to human-controlled territory. Instead, they dedicated themselves to safeguarding